Hello world. Welcome to this video tutorial on backend development using node.js and Express. In this tutorial, we'll explore how to set up a simple and efficient backend server with some other third-party libraries as well. Before we dive into the coding, let's briefly get to know the key technologies and concepts we'll be using as we progress in the video. Node.js. Node.js is a powerful JavaScript runtime built on Chrome's V8 engine. It allows you to run JavaScript on the server side, making it possible to build scalable and high-performance applications. Node.js uses an event-driven, non-blocking I/O model which makes it lightweight and efficient, perfect for data-intensive real-time applications. Express. Express is a fast, minimalist web framework for Node.js. It simplifies the process of handling HTTP requests and responses, routing, and middleware integration. With Express, you can build robust web applications and APIs with ease. Body parser. Body parser is a middleware for parsing incoming request bodies in a middleware before your handlers, available under the request.body property. It helps in extracting data sent in HTTP requests so that it can be used in your application. For example, when a client sends a POST request with JSON data, body parser will parse this JSON and make it available in the request.body object. Express validators. Express validators are a set of Express.js middlewares that wraps around validator.js, providing a convenient way to validate and sanitize incoming data. It ensures that the data received from clients meets the expected format and constraints, helping to prevent errors and improve the security of your application. NodeMon. NodeMon is a utility that monitors for any changes in your source code and automatically restarts your server. It makes development much more efficient by eliminating the need to manually stop and start your server after every change. Postman. Postman is a popular API client that makes it easy to create, share, test, and document APIs. It provides a user-friendly interface to send HTTP requests and inspect the responses, making it an essential tool for backend developers. With Postman, you can quickly test your API endpoints to ensure they are working correctly. UUID. UUIDs are useful for assigning unique identifiers to objects in your application, such as user IDs, session IDs, or any other unique keys. The UUID library in Node.js allows you to generate these unique IDs easily. Now, let's quickly look over the GET and POST API calls, which are the two most basic and common API calls required to set up a backend server. A GET request is used to retrieve data from the server. When a client sends a GET request, it asks the server to send back a specific resource. For example, fetching user data from a database. POST requests are used to send data to the server. When a client sends a POST request, it includes data that the server should process and store. For example, submitting a form to create a new user. Note, we will be working with dummy data as we don't have our database set up for this project. Now that we have got an overview of our project and its modules, let's start by creating a new folder in VS Code. In the terminal, type npm init and press enter. It will create a package.json file which contains all the dependencies required for our project. Now, we will install all the third-party modules and create a new app.js file. We will also set up our NodeMon by configuring the package.json file so that we don't have to restart the server whenever we update our file. In our JS file, start by creating an instance of Express and body parser. We will also create a constant called app which will use express and body parser. We will assign this app to a server running at 5000 by using the listen method. Now, let's see our API call in action by creating a get method which returns a simple hello message. We will now create two more folders, one to contain the routes and the other to contain the callback functions to handle API calls. In the user routes.js, create an instance of Express and a router which is appointed to the router method of Express. We will now export this router so that we can use it to handle our API calls. Now, let's make sure to import the user controller.js which will contain the callback functions. We will also have to import the user routes.js into our app.js file. Now we will use app.use method and give it a path of API/user so that every API call starts with our own custom path. We will now create these callback functions to handle the get and post methods. We will make sure to export these so they are usable by our routes. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we will work with some dummy data, so let's create a dummy users array which contain objects of predefined user data. Also make sure you get your spellings right, unlike me. To see our API call in action, let's fire up Postman. There you can create a new request by clicking on the plus icon and specifying the URL and the type of request you want to generate. For now, let's set it to get and retrieve the data of dummy users. Now, let's continue by creating a post API call and creating a callback function for user sign-up. Here, we will make sure to add the functionality that a user with an existing email address can't sign up with that email ID again. We will use the body parser here as we want to get specific parts from the request's body and apply some logic on it. The request will be sent in JSON format. The constant has user verifies if there is a user with an existing email address being passed in the request's body. We will also assign an ID using UUID to our newly signed up user. Let's see our sign-up API call in action. In Postman, we can send data in JSON format by clicking on Body, Raw and then selecting JSON. We will also see that the newly generated user is being fetched by our previous getAPI call. However, this is only temporary and the data will be lost when our server refreshes again. Now, let's create the post API call for user login. Here, we will get two parameters from the request's body, which will be the email and password. We will make sure that the credentials of the user are correct by again applying the find method on our dummy users array to see if there is any user with the entered email or not, and also to verify if the password entered by the user is correct or not. Finally, it's time for us to import the Express validator and use it to impose some validation on our user login and sign up. This makes it easy for us to apply validation on user entries so that we don't have to hard code the logic for situations such as name or email is empty or not, or password is of certain length or not. To use it, we will simply create an array as a third parameter of our API calls and pass in the fields on which we want to impose our checks on. It's like reading English, such as check if name is empty or not. We will do this for login as well as sign up and make sure that the passwords entered have a minimum length of 5 characters. We are not done yet. Go to usercontrollers.js and import validation result from Express Validator. It's an object that holds the current state of validation errors in a request, so we will pass our request as a parameter to it and check for errors. If errors exist, we will print an error message or else the code will execute in its normal flow. Navigate to Postman and see this in action. This was pretty much it for today. The link for the code file is attached in the description. I will try to bring you more on backend and APIs as we move on. Also try to learn more about these third-party modules, Node and Express from their official documentation. Until next time, happy coding!